Hey my friends, what is up? My name is Jocelyn. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the vibrational scale of emotions and talking about it in a different way. If you guys are kind of familiar with that whole concept, you can Google vibrational scale of emotions. There's kind of like this little cone looking graph that shows up. It looks like the colors of the chakra. There's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet or purple at the very top. And it's related and correlated with all of the emotions that we experience as humans. So we're all kind of familiar with that graph. At least if you're more involved in like the law of attraction field and new age thinking and diving into self-help and emotions, then you'll probably be familiar with that whole concept. But I'm going to explain it in a different way. If you guys have been watching my other videos, I kind of take it a different approach as far as like quantum physics and explaining with chemistry and psychology and all these different fields of study tied in with spirituality and law of attraction. So this is where I'm going to dive into each individual emotion and talk about them and where they kind of fit as far as raising our vibration, because we hear all these spiritual people and gurus and stuff talk about our energy and our vibrations. But let's talk about the nitty-gritty details so you guys understand down to that quantum level what is happening when you're thinking specific thoughts and it's creating brain chemicals which are feeding the cells in your body. There's this whole evolutionary process. We have protons, neutrons, and electrons that come together and they create atoms. Then those come together and they create molecules. Molecules come together and they create cells. Cells come together and they create tissues and organs, and then all of that comes together and it creates a human like you or I. So let's go down to the atoms. There's the nucleus with the protons and the neutrons. And an average human consists of about 7 times 10 to the 27th atoms. So that's a lot of atoms. Always keep those numbers into perspective because they help you, especially when you're on kind of like this spiritual growth path. It just helps you to visualize how much we truly are made of energy and light down at the core of us, and even space. Now, of course, those atoms come together and they create the cells, and we have about 37.2 trillion cells in our body. And each one of those cells consists of about 100 trillion atoms. Always think of that electric current that's even within the cells of your body. They all have an observation and they are taking in chemicals to react with the atoms. There's all this like chemistry happening down at that quantum level. So when we think a thought, it will produce a brain chemical that is like an emotion. So we know of all these different brain chemicals. You can head over to my other video where I explain that more in depth. So we have these atoms located in each cell in our body. When you are thinking those thoughts that are at the very bottom of that vibrational scale of emotions, each emotion is specifically tied to a color of light and an energy that's behind that, what's called a wavelength. The low vibrational emotions of shame, guilt, and fear, they would be vibrating more at a red or maybe an orangish red type of color, which means it's going to have a longer wavelength and a shorter amount of energy. And then when we climb up the vibrational scale of emotions, you can kind of feel physically that we get more energy as we think positive thoughts. You can feel that energy behind it. Maybe you have more energy physically. Maybe you get out of bed and you're depressed. You can kind of feel that difference when we experience those different emotions and the energy that's tied to them. Let's start at that shame, guilt, and fear level, since we know it's tied to the color red and less energy and a longer wavelength. So this is kind of what it looks like when you experience the emotion of shame. We know that at the center of that atom, there's the proton, neutron, and electron. We know in the nucleus there's the protons and the neutrons, and then we have the electrons that are orbiting around that nucleus. Now, I explained in my other video kind of what happens in chemistry is an electron, if it wants to gain energy and move up in orbit, it will absorb photons of light from its outside environment to gain its energy. So that can be from anything that's providing kind of like a warm energy source. That can be from the sun. The sun is emitting photons of light. That can even be from humans in our experience. That's why when the people that you surround yourself with, it's so important, because if they're vibrating at a shame, guilt, and fear level, then you are literally picking up those photons of light that vibrate at that very specific energy, and they are quantum tunneling through your being, and you two are just sharing energy back and forth. That's what entanglement is. That's what quantum tunneling is. That's how those two come into effect when it comes to relationships in our environment. So when we talk about all of these atoms within our being, the 7 times 10 to the 27th atoms that make up and consist in our body, if you are thinking an excess amount of thoughts that are vibrating at the brain chemicals specifically correlated with the emotions of shame, guilt, and fear, the atoms in your body, they only receive that low vibrational photon of energy from your brain chemicals into the cells. If you kind of look at this structure that I made, you can see the protons and the neutrons here. Here's the electron. It has this ability to move up in orbit, and you can see the amount of energy that's being emitted from each area of orbit that it occupies. When you're thinking the emotions of shame, guilt, and fear, it only has the ability to orbit at this low vibrational state right here, this red area right here. As you learn how to control your thoughts, as you learn how to access those other brain chemicals that are associated with pain relief, such as cannabinoids or opioids, your brain literally will make up those exact brain chemicals. When you start thinking thoughts that are a little bit better, that are a little bit easier on yourself, rather than thinking how ashamed you are of yourself, how guilty you feel about things from the past, how afraid you are of everything in your environment, relationships, society, and things of that nature, once you learn how to change those thought processes and provide yourself your own pain relief, you'll start feeding the electrons in your body to be able to move up in orbit. So that's how you can see specifically on this graph. So I've got shame, guilt, and fear at the bottom here, and then we move up the scale slowly with these other emotions. As we get up to purple or violet, that's where you're vibrating at more of a love, peace, joy, and enlightenment type of energy. When you're thinking thoughts that are loving about yourself, loving about the people in your environment, you're feeling compassion and forgiveness, and you understand other people's perspectives, then you can be vibrating at that very, very high energy. And this is the key to accessing the universal forces and tapping into universal energy. You have to be vibrating at that violet energy. Violet will have a shorter wavelength and a higher amount of energy. Once you're able to access that higher energy, it will literally tap you into the forces of the universe. This is how you receive synchronicities. This is how you start seeing signs in your environment and getting impulses and intuition on where to go next or what to do. There's a very, very specific process when it comes to your thoughts. People think that they are their emotions. Your emotions are just programmed brain chemicals that have been passed on to you from your parents and your family and the society around you. You entangled with them and their thought beliefs and their brain chemicals, the energy behind those brain chemicals, you literally entangled with them and then picked them up yourself, and you had the same exact brain chemical releases which became stored in the cells of your body. So it's important to understand that you are not your emotions. Your emotions have been passed down to you. Your emotions are just a manifestation, a vibrational manifestation of the vibration of the brain chemicals that have been released from your hypothalamus. There is an actual scientific way to understand law of attraction and how whatever your cells are vibrating at based off of your brain chemicals, that's also going to be the energy that's stored within you, and you're going to attract like energies. That energy will quantum tunnel out of your being, those photons, because quantum tunneling only happens with very, very small quantum entities like a proton or an electron. They are able to quantum tunnel through barriers they wouldn't normally be able to. So again, whatever your cells are vibrating at, those 37.2 trillion cells in your body, say that you think a lot of stressful thoughts, which anyway, if you're feeling ashamed of yourself, you're automatically going to be thinking thoughts that are based around the brain chemical of cortisol. So if your cells are vibrating at a very cortisol, stressful type of energy, then you're going to only be able to accept that amount of energy. The only real way to change that is by providing your own brain chemical releases, your own pain relief. You have a pharmacy in your brain that can completely create any type of chemical that you need to heal the body, especially to heal it from thoughts that have been passed down to you. I hope that all made sense. I hope you guys are enjoying the information. I just wanted to go through that short little process to explain emotions and what goes on behind them. Tune into my next video where I go over the 5 senses, because that's kind of the next part that we're going to go over, just to understand the basics of your vibrational body and how law of attraction plays into this and all these other fields of study. I hope you guys enjoyed the information, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.